Simone de Beauvoir was a French feminist and existentialist philosopher in the mid-1900s. Her arguments are complex and nuanced, as she tends to write about a combination of political, personal, and philosophical matters. Much of Beauvoir's writing deals with feminism and gender, unique among philosophers of the time. So let's explore a few of her ideas. Beauvoir asserts that women's inferiority is not a result of natural differences, but because of differences in upbringing. Male domination is not inherent or fated, but conditioned at every stage of development. Beauvoir says that man learns his power. By the same token, woman is not born passive or weak. Rather, she is socialized to believe that women must embody these characteristics. This is a large theme in Beauvoir's concept of the myth of woman. This concept represents the myth that women are inherently inferior and that their subordination is natural. Beauvoir claims that society presents the inferiority of women as an innate and unchangeable fact in order to justify patriarchy. This, as Beauvoir posits, is simply a myth, because gender is learned and women are equally as valuable and capable as men. This myth of innate inferiority can be understood by likening women and men to cats and dogs. I'd say we live in a dog-dominated society. We tend to assume that dogs are innately more loving and fun, and we see cats as inherently selfish and unfeeling. Our assumptions about cats' cold nature are what we use to justify our preference for dogs. However, we have created this myth about cats. We have decided that it's in their blood to be unloving, just as we have falsely decided that it's natural for women to be weak. Beauvoir finds it unjust to use sexual difference as an argument for women's subordination. Arguments for gender equality tend to erase the differences between the sexes. In today's society and in Beauvoir's time, women who gain power do so by, as Plato once put it, training and living like men, because only men, or those who emulate men, may rule. Beauvoir disagrees with the notion that masculinity is superior. She insists that women and men treat each other as equals, but that such treatment requires that their differences be recognized. She argues against the either-or frame of the woman question, the idea that either men and women are equal or they're different. She argues for equality while insisting on the validation of sexual difference. This is like the difference between the seasons. If one were to argue that winter and summer are equally good, that summer shouldn't be treated as superior, the argument would have to acknowledge the obvious difference in the weather in the summer and winter time. Claiming that women and men should be equal because they're not different is like saying that winter and summer should be equally preferred because they're basically the same. What's more effective, according to Beauvoir, is to validate sexual differences while arguing for equality, like acknowledging that winter is cold and summer is warm, but that both temperatures are equally good. In Beauvoir's most famous work, The Second Sex, she argues that woman is treated as the other. To quote Beauvoir, humanity is male, and man defines woman not in herself, but as relative to him. She is not regarded as an autonomous being. She is defined and differentiated with reference to man, and not he with reference to her. Beauvoir reminds us that throughout human history, man has monopolized the role of the subject. Woman is thus seen as the object, the deviation, the other. This concept of the other has to do with the idea of a default or prototype. Women are the other because they are secondary. Male is the default gender of humanity. We can think about this using dogs and cats again. In our society, dogs are the default house pet concept. Here are the Google image results for the search family pet. Dogs are the prototype, the norm. Cats are secondary, the other. Here are the Google image results for searching person. Evidently, male is the default. Women have not gained equality is that they lack group identity. Women have always existed alongside men, so it's hard for them to polarize. Women are unable to identify the reason for their otherness, unlike oppressed races. For example, women do not have a shared history to unite them. Dispersed among men, women identify themselves in terms of the differences of their oppressors, as white or black, as working class or middle class, as Muslim or Christian, rather than with each other. They lack solidarity and resources for organizing themselves into a we that demands recognition. One way to think about this dynamic is through the analogy of the 2016 GOP race. Donald Trump is currently dominating debates, media coverage, and conversation. The rest of the candidates are being oppressed by his overabundance. But they can't do much about it, because they are not unified. They're all competing against each other, so they can't organize and think of themselves as a unified group, and thus Trump remains in power. Simone de Beauvoir has been an influential feminist and thinker, and her ideas about gendered power dynamics remain relevant